Hi, and welcome to Quilting with Lori. Today I thought I'd do something a little different. I'm going to bring you up to my upstairs and I'm going to show you some of the quilts that I'm using here in my home. I've got a couple of really fast and easy quilt tutorials that I'm going to link at the end of this video so that you can actually make them yourself. I think it's wonderful to be able to make a quilt that you can use not only for Christmas but into the month of January and even February. And some of these snowman quilts do that for you beautifully. This quilt that I have hanging over the back of my couch is my holiday snowman pattern, and you can find that out on my website. I'll link that below as well. But this is one of the patterns that I'm going to link here. In just a minute, we're going to have the tutorial that you'll be able to watch to see how this cute little table runner is done. And often I like to take my table runners and I'll throw them over the back of the couch. So that is one, very simple. There's fusible applique. I've used some wool. You don't have to use wool, but I have. And then of course the beautiful log cabin type blocks on each side. And the colors that I used were very pretty, and I like those colors for my decor. Here is another adorable snowman table runner that I've made. And this pattern is available in a PDF for you. I'll link that below. And I'm going to go ahead and link this tutorial after this holiday snowman tutorial so that you can see how to make both of them. Again, very, very simple. I've used fusible applique for the snowflake, and I have these adorable snowmen facing in from each side of the table runner. I often like to keep the design in the center of the table runner simple so that if you put a centerpiece on there, you're not hiding anything. However, in this case, I've got the snowman in the center, so I do like to make sure he's visible. You could, if you want to, make two snowmen and then put the log cabin block in the center. So that's an option for you on that pattern. And this one was a very fun one. I think I did this one back in January. And just a very simple runner. I've done some echo quilting around the snowflake. I've done some scallops, a very simple scallop quilting in the border. So that's how I have done that for you. And let me show you also my lace tree quilt that's hanging here in the living room. All right, in the living room here, this is my snowman corner, if you will, but I do have my trees, my lacy tree quilt here. And this quilt I do keep hanging in here through the month of January. It's beautiful. It works well for Christmas, but it also works beautifully for the month of January and even into February. I will link the actual tutorial for this quilt below in the description box, or this video would just get too long. But I do hope that you'll go out and take a peek at how this one was done. I did use lace. I had a lot of extra lace in my stash, and I just embellished each and every tree with lace. Each tree is made with strips of either blue or green. And then of course there are 3 different borders that are available for this lacy trees quilt. I have created the scalloped border here. That's probably the most difficult border. And then there are 2 other borders. One is very simple, one is kind of so-so, and then this one is the most difficult one, but I love it. I think even though it's challenging, it is a lot of fun. So hopefully you'll take advantage of looking at these tutorials, and hopefully you'll be inspired to create them for your own home.
Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman, and today I have a fun project for you. This is my holiday snowman table runner, and today we're going to learn how to make the courthouse step blocks as well as the snowman block. We're going to applique a fusible web applique on the snowman. You can find this holiday snowman pattern out on my website, and I will include links below under the description box, so make sure you check that out if you're interested in getting that pattern. So let's take a look at what is needed to make this table runner. So all of the fabric requirements are listed in the pattern itself, and I'll show you what I've used for this particular runner. I'm using a beautiful burgundy for the borders and for the snowman's scarf. I'm using a real pretty print here for the borders and part of the courthouse steps. Let me show you the courthouse steps so that you can see that. And I'm also using a beautiful sparkly fabric. It's a light blue. It really looks like a wintry, cool fabric for the background as well as part of the courthouse steps. I have a charcoal fabric that I'm using for these squares in the corner as well as the snowman's hat. I have some felt here. I've got white for his body and his head. I do have a scrap of black fabric, or you could use black felt for his nose and eyes and so forth, his mouth. And I have a piece of it's a beige scrap of beige felt for his pipe. So the pattern contains the instructions to create the snowman table runner, and then it also includes the templates that you're going to need for the holiday snowman as well as for the courthouse steps. I don't necessarily use templates of creating the courthouse steps, and I actually have the measurements in the pattern, but if you prefer to use templates, it is available for you. So if you're using fusible interfacing, you can, if you want, you can reverse the image by just tracing it on the back side. You'd have to darken these lines and then trace it from the back so that your snowman would end up facing this direction. I didn't worry about that for the snowman that I'm making today. I just went ahead and traced it. I put my fusible webbing on top of this and traced on the solid lines. And my snowman will face the other direction, which is fine. The snowman can face any direction, it doesn't matter. But if you do use fusible interfacing, you do not include the seam allowances. The only reason you would include the seam allowances is if you are doing a needle turn applique. Otherwise, ignore the seam allowances and you're going to trace on the dark line for all of the products here. Let's see how I've done that. So in the instructions, you'll see that you'll need to cut a background which goes behind the snowman, and it recommends 12.5 inches, so it finishes at 12. You can certainly cut it maybe at 13 inches, and then after your applique is done, then square it up to 12.5 inches, whatever you prefer. If you think that your applique process might shrink it up a little bit, then go ahead and cut it at 13 inches just to make sure that you have the 12.5. To square up at the end. So that is for the background. And here are the parts, the elements to my snowman, 2 pages of those. And what I have done is I've traced them, and this is all curling. I'm sorry, it was on a roll. I apologize for the buzzer noise in the background. That was my dryer. But here are the elements to the snowman. So this is his body and his head, and I'll secure those onto white felt and then cut them out. And these 3 pieces here, actually 4 pieces, Q, P, O, and R, they're his scarf. And so I will secure that onto the back of red. And then we also have his pipe and his eyes and nose. And then the last 2 elements are his hat up here. And you can see where each of these elements is to be placed on the key that's in the pattern. So what I'm going to do is just cut out very loosely these elements that are going to go on particular color fabrics. That way I can very easily apply them to the back of those particular fabrics. Let me show you how I'm going to do that. Fusible interfacing, and I just laid it over the top of all of the elements and traced them onto the fusible interfacing, or webbing, as you see right here. And now I am going to attach these pieces to the appropriate color on the back side or the wrong side of the fabric. So here is the hat. B and C have been adhered to this charcoal gray fabric. Here is the little pipe. So I'm going to press the little pipe onto the felt and follow the instructions for your particular fusible web. Every fusible web has a different time that they want you to press, whether or not you're to use steam or not. Typically, they don't want you to use steam, but just follow your manufacturer's instructions. So here's my nose and eyes and mouth. There's my pipe. These are my hat, and I'll have to cut all these out. Here is my scarf. So here are the pieces for my scarf. Whoops, I'm on the wrong side. I almost put that on the right side. Here we go. Make sure you adhere this on the back side or the wrong side of the fabric. There we go. We'll start by just pressing these on first. And then we will go to this last one right here. I'm using my new little Aliso iron. It's a little mini project iron. I love it. So here is the scarf, and you can see all of the elements of the scarf here on the front side. Now let's do the white felt, and this is the snowman's body. Let me move this out of the way because I need more room on my ironing pad. So here's the body, and I haven't cut apart the head yet. I just got it down there. And that should fit just fine. And of course on this felt, either side is right or wrong. It doesn't matter. And some batiks are the same also. So if you're using batiks, you could find that either side is right or wrong. Okay, so now the snowman is ready. And I am going to cut all of these elements out, and then we're going to place them onto the background. So let me get this cutting done, and I'll be right back. So now we are going to place the snowman on the background square, and what I have done is simply pressed creases in it. I folded it and then folded it again so that I have some guidelines just to kind of center my snowman on this block. So we'll start with his background, and you'll notice that there's a cutout there around his little arm. And so I'm thinking I might place him about right there. I'm going to go ahead and remove the paper, but I'm not going to press him down until I'm happy with the placement. So right now I'm going to start there, see if this is going to work. There's his head, and you're going to notice that his head is actually not going to adhere right on top of the body because we're going to have this scarf that is going to be in here. Let me remove all of the elements. Get the paper off of these. Let's just kind of lay them on here. Get them ready to work with. So the first element that I want to lay down is R, and this is R. So that's the part of the scarf that's wrapping around his neck. So here is the snowman that I've put together, and you can do so much with him. You can add a stripe on his hat if you'd like, or you can even do that with thread. But there's so much you can do if you want to have your scarf coming off this direction, if you want it coming off this direction. This snowman is yours. Just have fun with it. So I went ahead and put my two parts of the scarf there, and then this is the little tie that goes over that. And then I've just put his little face together here with his eyes, his nose, and his mouth. And of course, if you want, you could put an orange carrot nose there instead of the oval nose that the pattern comes with. But there's so much you can do with this. Have fun with it. Just be real creative and enjoy it. And so now, once you're happy with the placement and the layout, if you like where you've got it located on the square, then and only then will you iron it down and press it and secure it, secure that adhesive to the background before we take it over to the sewing machine and either sew it, applique it by machine, or you could applique by hand. If you like to do that, maybe you'd like to get some pearl cotton or some DNC floss and just have fun doing some hand applique, whatever you enjoy. All right, so I have my snowman secured to the background. So he is ready to be appliqued, and I've gone upstairs and grabbed some of my embroidery threads, and I'm going to do mine on the machine. I want to get it done quickly. You are welcome to take pearl cotton or DMC floss and hand applique them, but I'm going to do it all by machine today. And I found some threads that will work beautifully to secure my snowman to this background here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll let you see some of it, but most of it I'll do off camera. It's a little boring to watch all of it, but I'll show you some of it as I'm working here. For the felt snowman, I simply used a straight stitch around the edge of his head, and I've also done his shoulder here just with a straight stitch. And now I'm going to bring my thread up here and go ahead and stitch around that. Because it's a felt and it doesn't fray, I am simply using a straight stitch, plus all of this is fused, so there shouldn't be any fraying. So I've done the white body. Now I'm going to do the pipe. So I've put thread in that matches the pipe. And I'm again just going to do a simple straight edge stitch all the way around the pipe. I think I'll start here at this side. I'm going to bring my thread up. And I did a back stitch. I have done back stitches at the beginning and end of all of these. So now my pipe has been sewn on, just a simple straight stitch. And I'm going to do that with all of these black elements on his face as well. I'm going to change threads now. So I have my black thread in now, and I'm going to do the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and then the hat as well. With the edge stitching of all of these small elements, if you happen to have a knee lift, you might want to put that on. That might help you to release your hands so that you're able to maneuver the block itself and your knee can take care of your presser foot. So for the eyes and the nose, I just did a simple edge stitch, a straight edge stitch all the way around these circles and that oval. For the mouth pieces, I actually have what's considered a snowflake stitch on my machine, and it basically just creates a beautiful little snowflake to secure that round mouthpiece onto the snowman. It was a real easy way to do that so that I wasn't having to edge stitch around those teeny tiny little round circles. So see if your machine has a snowflake stitch if you're doing this by machine. So for the hat, what I did was I created a snowflake stitch along where the two pieces connect, and that's how I have secured it. Let's see if you can see the snowflake stitch. It's a red thread, so it's not real visible on the camera, but hopefully you can see that. You could also put a strip, a red fabric there. You could check fabric, whatever you want. Have fun with your snowman. Be creative. So it looks as if I lost a little bit of video there, so I'm going to repeat what I just did. I started with the center square, and I attached the two 4.5-inch strips on each side, opposite sides. I finger pressed them open. You certainly can take them to the ironing board and press each time. I just finger pressed at this point, and I'm pressing away from the center. Then I came back and I grabbed the 6.5-inch light blues, and I sewed them on opposite sides. Now I'm going to go back to the bottom here, and I'm going to grab the 6.5-inch lights and add those to each end and sew those. So the lights are all being added on opposite sides, and the blues are all being added on opposite sides from shortest to the longest. So I'm going to go ahead and sew now, and you'll see how this work goes together. So here's the second block, and it is all pieced and finger pressed. I'm pressing all the seams to the outside, so I'm going to take it to the ironing board and do that with the iron, and then I'm going to square it up to 12.5 inches. All three blocks should be squared up to 12.5 inches. Okay, so here are the blocks, the two courthouse step blocks as well as the snowman block. And there's so many different things you could do with this. If you wanted a longer table runner, you could make more snowmen or more log cabins. If you want to just use the three blocks, maybe you'd like to put a snowman on each side and a courthouse step log cabin in the center. Just make allowances for the fabric that you'd be using, but you can absolutely do that. There's so much that you can do with this particular pattern. And for the borders, I typically don't actually cut the lengths of my border until I have my center quilts put together, because sometimes if your seam allowances are larger or smaller than the what's called for in the pattern, then what you cut isn't necessarily correct. So I always wait until the center of my table runners and quilts are all put together, and then I measure through the center to identify how long I should cut all of my borders for the tops and the bottoms. And that way you're making sure that everything stays squared up on the quilt itself. But I think this little holiday snowman quilt is such a cute quilt. This little snowman is just adorable. I love making him, and I'm going to give this table runner to a friend of mine. Here is the back of the courthouse steps. I did press everything out, so everything is pressed out. And then I don't think I've squared up these two yet. I need to square up the two courthouse step blocks to 12.5. And on my center block here, if you remember, I cut this at 13 inches, and so I needed to square it up to 12.5. All three of the blocks should be squared up to 12.5 inches. And then you're just simply going to put them together as you see here. And we've got the blues. Actually, I don't have these facing correctly. We'll have the light blue fabric facing top and bottom. Or excuse me, the pale blue top and bottom, and these light fabrics facing the snowman. And then I'll go ahead and create my borders using the charcoal again in the four corners. And it's going to be adorable. I can't wait to finish this one. Here's another quick picture of the snowman quilt. Maybe you can see it a little bit better here on my tabletop. But he went together beautifully. On this one, I did do a blanket stitch by hand all the way around. I used pearl cotton and I did a blanket stitch. So I was very patient and I did that very nicely. And on this one, I did this by machine. So this is all, and it looks very nice, all raw edge. Edge stitching is what I've done, except for across the snowman's hat. On his hat here, I did a snowflake stitch. I'm not sure if you can see that very well. I used the burgundy, which matched the scarf on this hat, just to secure that, because these were two elements and it needed to be stitched down. So that's how I've done it. I really enjoyed doing this. It goes together really quickly. You'll be surprised at how quickly it goes together. And just lay out your courthouse blocks like I did, like I showed you at the sewing machine. It really helps things to go together much more quickly. And then of course, as you do your snowman, just make sure that you place everything on the background before you secure it. You don't want to press anything until you're happy with its position on the background block. And then have fun putting it together. You could even make a large quilt, a lap quilt, using these adorable log cabin and a snowman blocks. How fun that would be. I hope you've all enjoyed following along as I've shown you how to put together the snowman and the courthouse step blocks for the holiday snowman pattern. And don't forget, I'll have links below to that pattern if you're interested in it, and I'll also have some other links that'll take you to some fun projects out on my website. Hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. Have a great weekend and happy quilting.
Hello and welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. We have a great project today. It's really going to be a fun project for you and a very quick one. It's a table runner. It's my Snowman and Snowflake's table runner. There he is. He's just a cute little table runner that I think you'll enjoy making. Here is one of the snowman blocks. Now, the unique thing about this snowman is that we're going to be creating him using Drunkard's Path templates. And let me show you my set of Drunkard's Path templates. I have a set here. I do have them out on my website, but you might already have a large Drunkard's Path template. You need a Drunkard's Path template that will make a 9.5-inch block, because that's what these blocks are, 9.5 inches before we put them into the quilt. So we're going to be using these two pieces, and we are going to be cutting out the snowman face from the white fabric using this pie slice piece. I like to call this the pie slice because it kind of looks like a huge piece of pie. And then we're going to cut out the background of the block with this. It's going to be the light blue background. And so let's take a peek at how we put this block together. All right, so here is the little block that we're putting together, and we're making two of these mirror image. And when I say mirror image, you'll see that this pumpkin is facing that direction, this pumpkin is facing that direction. They're both facing, their noses are pointing toward the center of the block, which means that this hat specifically has to be a mirror image. And so the template that you'll be getting, you'll want to make sure that one of them is a created mirror image. And the noses and the nose and the eyes, they're identical in either direction, but it's just the hat that you want to create mirror image. And maybe you would prefer to make a different hat. Maybe you'd rather have something other than this stocking cap that I have, but I think it's adorable. I have simply done, I made the Drunkard's Path block, and then I did fusible applique with the nose, the eyes, and the hat. I did change out my eyes a little bit. Instead of making them round as my pattern calls for, I went ahead and just cut them as kind of little coal, pieces of coal, if you will. They're kind of have round, it's a square that's kind of rounded out. So that's what I have done there. You might want to add a mouth. You might want to add some cheeks. You might want to add some eyebrows. There's so much you could do with this. Maybe you want one of these to be a girl snowman and the other one to be a boy snowman. Have fun with it. This is really a great time. I did an edge stitch, a straight stitch, applique edge stitch all the way around. And that simply is stitching a straight edge, and I used a matching color, about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric, all around each piece. That applique was done, I think, in less than 10 minutes. There's really nothing to it. So the block goes together quickly. I'm going to show you how to do this Drunkard's Path and put that together. First, I'm going to show you how to cut it. I'm going to show you how to sew it. I'm going to show you how to applique this. And then we're also going to work on the center block. My center block is very simple because oftentimes with a table runner, you have a centerpiece sitting on there so it's covered up. So this is just simply a snowflake. And I'm going to show you how you can get that traced as well and cut out your snowflake from the white fabric and applique it onto the center block. Over here, I have the rest of my fabrics. I already did cut another nose, so my second nose is ready, but I had some orange fabric for the nose. I had some black squares. I just pulled 2-inch squares from my fabric stash from which I will make my eyes. So that takes care of that. Out in the corners of this table runner, there are some of these quarter square triangles that we're going to be making. So I have 2 of my teal color or dark blue 3.5-inch squares, and I have 2 light blue 3.5-inch squares, and that's what we're going to use to make those quarter square triangles. And then I have my 1-inch inside and outside borders here of that dark teal. And then I also have my light blue borders that are right here. And then I have to cut, I realize I don't yet have the square cut for the center. I need a 10.5-inch square, I need a 9.5-inch square cut for that snowflake block. And then I have the extra fabric here for that snowflake block. That's what I also used for my snowman. This white fabric, I'm sure you can't tell, but there are snowflakes all over printed on that white fabric. And then this is a batik that I'm using for his hat. You could use black, but I want to go with these blues because my dining room is blues and that will match my dining room. And then I grabbed a fabric here that kind of looks like a linen. And I'm going to show you how to cut our background pieces from that in just a minute. The first thing we're going to do is cut the background, and that will be from, in my case, I'm cutting it from this light blue fabric. And as I mentioned, we need to cut a 9.5-inch square. That's what we're cutting here. So I'm finding that cutting line that says 9.5 inches, and I am making sure that I am lining up the edges of my fabric on that 9.5-inch cutting line. That's very important so that you end up with the right size block. If you line up, in the case of this particular Drunkard's path, this outside edge is for a 10-inch block, and we're not making a 10-inch block, we're making a 9.5-inch block, which will end up finished in the quilt at 9 inches. But right now we've got to cut it on that 9.5-inch line, so I'm simply lining that up there. And then I'm going to have to turn this so that it works out better for me as a right-hander. I've got to be able to cut it correctly. Okay, so I've got this lined up again on the 9.5-inch line, and I am just going to follow that curve and cut. And there we go. There it is. There is our background. So this is excess. We can use that. We can cut this up for our scraps, or we can put it in our crumb quilt, whatever we'd like to do that, or crumb quilt basket. The one thing I'm going to do right away is fold it and put a crease in there. That crease is going to help us match it up to the pie slice, or the white pie slice of the snowman face. So I've creased it. Now I'm going to grab the other piece of the Drunkard's path and the white fabric, and I'll show you how to cut that. I've put this white fabric on a green mat so you can see it a little bit easier. And now I am going to cut this snowflake out. Again, I'm going to have to turn it because I'm right-handed, so I've got to get this turned around. And the pie slice for each of these templates is identical. So the smaller the block gets, basically the larger this appears in the block because it doesn't change in size. So now that one is done. And what I'm going to do, remember I had folded that and found the crease there. I'm going to fold this pie slice, find the crease there. So those are the 2 spots I'm going to match up. I'm only going to use 3 pins. I'm going to use a pin here. I'm going to use a pin at each end here. And that's all that I'm going to use for pins. Let me show you how I'm going to pin this. So we are going to make it right sides together. The first thing I'm going to do is pin this crease to this crease. Make sure I've got it here. All right. Then this is going to come line up there so that it's perfectly parallel. You don't want it like this. You want this to line up so that it is perfectly lined up with the outside edge.
And I'll show you how wonky this will look here in just a moment. Let me get it pinned. Okay, so it's perfectly straight there. That short edge is perfectly straight on that side. And we have all of this kind of up in the middle here, and that's all going to feed into itself. It's going to work out beautifully, and you'll see. And here again, we have this short edge. We're going to line it up over here so that it's perfectly lined up with the outside edge. And I've pinned it there. And this looks really wonky, but it will work great. So I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'll bring my camera over as well. And I'll lay it down, and I'll start stitching there a scant 1/4 inch, and I'll remove the pin. And then I am just going to continue walking my way around the block on the machine, and you will be amazed. And then once I get to the center here, I'll remove that, but you'll be amazed at how that just lines up beautifully as you continue sewing all the way around the block. And then once I get to the last pin, I'll remove that and make sure I'm coming off straight off the edge. Don't come off at an angle, come straight off the edge here. And so I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'll bring you over so that you can see me sew this curve on the Drunkard's path. I brought my block over here, laid it under the machine. As you can see here, the blue is lined up perfectly with that. I'm going to take a stitch or two, then I'm going to remove this pin. And then I'm going to continue stitching just a scant 1/4 inch. Whoops, trying to keep my hands out of the way so you can see. And I just continue to line up the blue fabric with the edge of the white fabric. And it is just lining up beautifully. I'm not pulling anything. I'm just lining up the fabric. The 3 pins are all that's necessary. I'm removing that center pin now. I'm going to continue just lining up the fabric. Don't pull anything. This is all bias. If you pull it, you'll stretch things out. But this just goes together beautifully. And a scant 1/4 inch is what you need to sew. And that just allows for the turn of fabric. And I'm going to remove that last pin. All right, let's see how I did on camera. Let's see what I did here. Look at that. Great. It worked out well. And I do not clip seams. It's not necessary. You can either press the seam away from the center or toward the center, depending on where the dark fabric is. I always press away from the light. So I'm going to press mine toward the blue. And because I sew with a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, there is no need to clip seams. It lays beautifully. Let me go press this and I'll show you. Here is the block finished at 9.5 right now. So it's all pieced. It will go into the block and end up being a 9-inch block, but right now it's 9.5, and that's what we're looking for. So this is the snowman face. This is the blue sky background, and you're going to need 2 of these because you're going to have a snowman on both sides. And again, it's the reverse image for one of the hats. The Drunkard's Path block that you're making is going to be identical for both of these blocks. There's nothing mirror image about the Drunkard's Path block because you're just going to turn it. So here is how that one was made, and the same exact block is made for the left side of the table runner. And then you'll just add your nose and your eyes and your hat. And the hat is what I will be getting traced onto my fusible paper right now. I will give you templates for both the right and the left block in the pattern. And so this is the one I'm going to trace for my left block because I'm going to trace him on this side. I'm just simply going to lay fusible. And this is a light fusible. It's soft fuse, I believe, is what I have here. There's so many different types of paper-backed fusibles. A light heat and bond, steam-a-seam light 2, whatever you might have. And I prefer to use the light so that there's not as much glue in the block itself, and that makes stitching and applique so much easier on it. And so what I'm going to do now is trace this. I've got to track down my pencil. Here is the pencil. And you might want to grab a ruler because there's quite a long line. And I do like to keep a little excess fusible all the way around the outer edge of the element, and that just makes sure that your fuse goes all the way to the very, very edge of each of your elements that you're tracing. So I'm tracing this one from the pattern. I'm not cutting the pattern apart at all. This pattern remains intact. And then if I needed to trace eyes or my nose, I could also add that on this. But right now, because I already have my nose and eyes done, I'm just going to trace this. And then it is going to be pressed to the back of this fabric for his hat. So I'm going to locate, this is the back. I'm going to loosely cut this out. I'm going to grab scissors and just loosely cut this out. Again, I'm leaving about 1/4 inch all the way around. And then I'm going to take it to my iron and I'm going to press it to the back. This is the back side. This batik is lighter on this side and darker on that side. So I want this to be my right side. This is my wrong side. So I'm going to press this fusible onto this. Once it's cool, then I will cut it out on the drawn lines. I'm in the process of cutting the hat out. And this is just a little stocking cap. If you want your snowman to have a different type cap, go ahead and make something that you'll enjoy. And so there's a little bit of fuse left all the way around, but that just ensures that that fuse comes all the way to the outer edges. All right, this time it fused. Remove that. And we'll bring our little block or our little snowman over. And the one thing that you'll notice is that his cap doesn't go all the way over to the edge. It just fits in there just like that. And I think I'm going to redo these eyes. These eyes that I had previously cut out were round, just like the pattern. And I think I want his eyes to match the little coal pieces. So I'm going to redo that. And then you might just want to check to make sure that you have your snowman nose in the same vicinity as this side, so they resemble one another. I am going to go redo my eyes. And once I'm happy with the placement of the hat, the nose, the eyes, and anything else you might want to place on your snowman face, then you'll want to take it to your iron and fuse it. Once it's fused to the background, it is ready to go. It's permanent. And then I'm going to set up my machine with orange and black. I'll probably do the black stitching first and then the orange stitching. I'm simply going to do a straight edge stitch all the way around. To make sure that both of your snowmen are matching, this one I've already fused. So I've laid it right sides together on this block. And then I just made sure that my bottom nose was in the right spot, that he kind of matched where I had that one placed. And I made sure these eyes were in the same spot as well as the hat. And so I am good to go. So I can take this over to my iron and press this one. And then I'm going to get it appliqued and I'll bring it back and show this to you. Both blocks are applique. I used a bright orange rayon thread, embroidery thread, to applique the nose, and I used this dark black for the eyes and also around the hat. Now let's get to the snowflake. This is the 9.5-inch square on which the snowflake will be placed. And then this is the snowflake itself. The pattern comes with the snowflake so that you can trace it onto the fusible, which is what I did. I just laid my fusible, a paper bath fusible on top of my pattern. Again, do not cut the pattern out, leave it intact. I traced it on there, and then you get a little, this is the item number C here on the template. You get to use that as many times as you want, actually, within the center of this. I used it 6 times, and I just placed it in there. I put a dot in the center, and I just placed it in there 6 times. You could use a different design in the center. You could cut out a complete circle. You can make a different design. You can do anything you want. This is your snowflake. So I'm going to go ahead and fuse this to the white fabric. And then once it's fused, I will cut it all out. And then these will be cut out here as well so that the blue background will show through. So here is the snowflake block. I traced it on the fusible, pressed it to the wrong side of the white fabric, and I cut out, I had traced on those little elements here. I cut them all out. You want to use a small scissors when you do that. And now I'm going to remove the paper back here, the paper back fusible. Make sure I've got it still connected to the, yep, there we go. And remove that, and then I'm simply going to place it on the center of my block. You can take your block and press it, crease it horizontally, and then crease it vertically, and that will help you locate the center so that you can be sure to get your snowflake exactly in the middle. And I'm just going to do a little finger pressing here to accomplish that. And that will just kind of help me line everything up. And then just try and make sure that you've got everything the same distance from top and bottom and on the right-hand side. And once you're pleased with its location, press it. It's permanent. And again, I am just going to take a white rayon thread. I'm going to thread my machine. I'm using Aurifil, just a cream Aurifil in the bobbin, and I'm using these in the top. They're rayon threads for embroidery. And I'm appliquing using just a straight edge stitch all the way around the entire element. I'm going to go do that. I'll bring it back, and then we're going to start putting the table runner together. Before I sew on my little borders, I wanted to share with you what I did. I changed up the position of my outside snowman. The pattern shows it facing the center. However, I decided I like having one of them facing up and this one facing down. So you can do whatever you want with your table runner. You can position them in any way, but this is how I'm positioning mine now. I'm going to add the inside borders here. These are the inside teal borders, and then I'll add these outside borders as well as make the quarter square triangle. And I'll show you that here in just a minute. Let me get some of these borders on first. I have it pieced together, so I've got my 3 blocks here, and I did twist this block a little bit so you can put your table runner together any way you'd like. I've gotten the small borders on first, and then I've added the large borders here. But now before we put these outside larger borders on, we need to make the quarter square triangles. And each of these quarter square triangles needs to be a 2.5 inch quarter square triangle. So what I have done is I have pulled 1 inch larger pieces of fabric, or actually I've cut them at 3.5 inches. And I'm simply going to place them right sides together. I am going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. I guess I'll need to grab a pen here. Let's see if this purple will show for you. I'm going to draw a diagonal line here from corner to corner on both of them. So this is starting out just like a regular half square triangle. But this is cut an entire inch larger than what we're going to end up with. So we're going to go ahead and sew a scant 1/4 inch on both sides of these drawn lines. The first thing we're going to do, once we've drawn these diagonal lines, is sew a scant 1/4 inch on both sides of those drawn lines. So I'm going to do that, and I'll bring it back. My 2 half square triangles are created. So I've stitched a scant 1/4 inch on both sides of the drawn line. I am now going to cut on that drawn line. And at this point, we have created half square triangles. Now, the next thing we're going to do is press these. I'm going to press all of these. There's a total of 4 half square triangles here. And then I'm going to show you what you need to do next to create quarter square triangles. Normally, when I make half square triangles, I like to press my seams open. But in this case, for quarter square triangles, you definitely want to just press your seams to the dark. And then you are going to lay them together, right sides together, lights to darks, darks to lights. And then you're just going to butt up those seams so that it's completely flat. You don't feel any spaces in there at all. And I've already done that over here. So I have lights to darks and darks to lights. And I'm making sure those seams are butted up nicely. Just move it around with your finger and you'll understand what I mean. So we'll get those all butted up very nicely. And then we are going to draw another diagonal line perpendicular to that seam line. So this is the seam line, and we're drawing a diagonal line perpendicular to the previous seam line. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create another set of half square triangles with these two, and we'll end up with 4 quarter square triangles. I'm going to stitch a scant 1/4 inch down this side and back that side, and I'll do the same over here. And then I'll cut on those drawn lines, and they'll open up and be quarter square triangles. Let me show you that. All right, I've drawn the diagonal line. I've sewn a scant 1/4 inch on both sides. And when I cut on that drawn line, you're going to see that I have a total of 2 quarter square triangles here. And the same thing, I sewed on each side of the drawn line. When I cut on that drawn line, I will have a total of 2 quarter square triangles here. Then I'll need to square up each quarter square triangle to 2.5 inches. I've just cut one apart here, and I'm going to cut the other one apart. There we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we started out with 3.5 inch squares, 2 darks, 2 lights, to accomplish this. I decided I'm going to use my Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer to square these up. I'm going to use the 2.5 inch marking right here. I'm going to line up that 2.5 inch stitching line on my stitching line right there. I'm also going to make sure that this dark line in the center of the ruler lines up perfectly with the stitching line that comes up perpendicular on the element there. So there we go. I've got my 2.5 inch stitching line lined up here, and I've got that dark line of the ruler lined up perfectly with that stitching line. Now I can trim this up. And what's kind of nice about the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmers is that you can get rid of the excess points by putting your, there we go. And it's now 2.5 inches. I'll press mine next, and I'm going to press this last seam open. It just will allow everything to lay nicely. I'll have to clip that stitch from that last seam, and then everything will lay nice and flat. I have them pressed. I pressed the last seam allowance open, so they're laying beautifully. And now I'm going to attach them to this strip, and then I can attach the last strip here. And then I do have an outer edge, an outer border. That's another narrow border like that. That will go all the way around. Let me get that done, and I'll bring it back as a completed table runner, and you can see what it looks like. I've finished piecing the table runner. I've made a few changes. I made coal-shaped or square, rounded squares, if you will, for the snowman's eyes. And I did twist this block a little bit. You could certainly put them both together just as the pattern suggests here. But I decided to twist mine. And we have our quarter square triangles there. So today you learned how to put together a drunkard's path, appliquing, as well as these quarter square triangles. And then I've simply got some borders all the way around. This is ready, and I can't wait to get this quilted. I'm going to throw it on my long arm real quick and just get it quilted up very quickly so I can get it on my dining room table for the month of January and even into and through February. It could remain up there, especially for those of us who live in states where the snow is falling. The pattern for the snowman will be in the description box below. It's out on my website, so you can check for it out there. So stay tuned. If you do like the content that I provide on my channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with your friends, your family, your quilt guilds. That really does help my channel to grow. And make sure you like it and make a comment. I love to read the comments from my viewers. Thank you so much for doing that. And until next week, happy quilting.